Bismillahirrahmanirrahim. Assalamu alaikum. Dear students, I am Engineer Shad Muhammad, lecturer, Department of Civil Engineering, Comsats University, Islamabad, Sahiwal campus. In today's lecture, that is lecture number 11 of the subject Civil Engineering, Construction and Graphics, we will be studying something about building surface finishing, specifically concerning plastering. There are different methods of surface finishing of the buildings. We'll be only concerned regarding plastering in today's lecture. Due to immense time gap in our studies and we lost our momentum for the last 1 month, we did not study anything new. Let's overview our previous lecture topics so that you revive your concepts regarding them and overview the course content, how much we have studied and how much is remaining, and where we are standing now. Okay. In our previous lecture, lecture number 1, we studied regarding civil construction projects and project categories. We studied construction project goals and objectives. We also studied building permits, codes, and construction standards. We studied, then we moved into the building construction and we studied about masonry, different terminologies, technical terminologies regarding masonry. We also studied different types of masonry, 3 basic types of masonry: stone masonry, block masonry, and brick masonry. Then we studied about brick masonry and we studied something regarding different types of masonry bonds, brick masonry bonds, and we also studied regarding stone masonry. We also studied something about site selection and its orientation. In lecture number 8, we studied pre-construction site work, in which we studied different layout techniques, and a few of the concepts of surveying which were related to site works. We also studied civil engineering drawings, different drawings which are helpful in our site work. In our previous lecture, lecture number 10, we studied about dampness in the building. In today's lecture, we will study surface finishing regarding plastering. This was what we have already studied and accomplished. Okay, this is your course content. Subject civil engineering, construction and graphics, and the highlighted portion we have studied, and today we will be studying regarding building finishing. In this week we will be studying only building finishing, and a few of the unhighlighted portion we will study with the passage of time. All right. In our previous lecture, that is lecture number 10, we studied something about dampness in the building. What are the sources of the dampness? How dampness is caused? We also studied the effect of the dampness on the buildings. Let me make it clear that dampness is the major effect within the building. Means you cannot apply dampness concepts in bridges, or you can say that offshore constructions, something like that. Our dampness is major concern in buildings. And we also studied about the causes of the dampness. Causes of the dampness includes from the basement, or you can say that from the foundation, the dampness caused due to from the foundation, and dampness caused due to rain, and parallel in the atmosphere, moisture content in the atmosphere, and dampness caused through above surface, above the building. We also studied prevention techniques of the dampness. We studied 4 basic techniques regarding prevention of the dampness, that is surface treatment, by in which we apply surface, we specify some surface treatment, we apply some surface treatment, and by integral method we make some chemicals or ingredients within the mix design of the composite which we are applying on the surface, and by special construction techniques, and we also can prevent dampness by providing a damp proof course, DPC. In providing a damp proof course, we also studied 2 different methods: horizontal damp proof course and vertical damp proof course. And in our next topic, we studied DPC in basements. DPC in basements we can also provide through vertical DPC and horizontal DPC. We also studied that if you are providing a matte foundation, then we need not to provide something DPC, because you are aware that RCC, or you can say that PCC by its own self, is so dense composite structure, composite material and composite structure, that it do not allow dampness to move further. Alright, in today's lecture we will be studying something about plastering. We will study introduction to surface finishing and technical terminologies regarding related to plastering, and we will also study different types of plastering: cement plastering, lime plastering, mud plastering, stucco plastering, Mughal plastering, and we will also study common defects in the plastering. Let me make it clear that in types of plastering there are two basically different types of plastering. Plastering are categorized on the basis of material, and plastering is also categorized on the basis of design, how you are going to design the surface. As you can see in these two different pictures, that a mason is plastering a wall, a block masonry wall with the plastering. What is the mixed design of this plastering? You never know without being told. And here you can see that a mason is plastering a reinforced concrete column. And here in another picture you can see that a person is plastering a wall having a wire mesh. A wire mesh has been used. Wire mesh can be used to control the disintegration of the brick masonry, block masonry or stone masonry while earthquake occurs. And you must be aware that after 2005 it has been told in the guidelines of the building construction that your building's wall should have this wire mesh to control the disintegration of the disintegrated blocks and brickwork. Anyhow, what is plastering? Surface finish. What is surface finishing? The art of treating the surface of the building materials with a suitable covering material to make them weather resistant and decorative is called surface finishing. It is an art. It is an art of treating the surface of the building. It is an art of treating the surface of the building with a suitable covering material. Why we need to treat the surface of the building? Why we need to cover the building with some material to make them weather resistant and decorative? As you know that most common structures in the Pakistan are consist of brick masonry. Brick masonry are highly water absorptive, so when it dries then it wets due to raining, and what makes it waterproof is this mortar, or you can say plastering, surface finishing. That is surface finishing. Surface finishing does include not only mortar, but it also includes paints and whitewashes and different types of techniques of surface finishing. All those are included in surface finishing. The covering material used for surface finishing is called surface finishes. The type of material which is used for covering the surface finish is called surface finishes, which can be plaster and paints and etc. In English, plaster usually means a material used for interior of the building, used for the interiors of the building, while render commonly refers to the external application. In English, mainly British English or American English, plaster is used mainly for interior surface finishing of the building, and rendering is used for external application. As in AutoCAD 3D, when you draft 3D model of the building, you use the render word in your software applications, rendering, 3D rendering. That is external application of the surface finishing. Anyhow, The art of covering of the surface of the masonry work with suitable material is called plastering. If you cover the masonry work with a suitable material, in definition it is not specified that which type of material, but if you cover this masonry work with a suitable material, any suitable material is called plastering. You can see that different types of stone-grit plastering. You can see aggregate plastering. Aggregates are visible, and grit wash plastering. Different minute type of these are also aggregates are mixed to have different designs of the plastering. Anyhow, what is the function of the plastering? Basically, plastering is used for three major purposes: to protect the surface from effects of weathering agencies. Weathering agencies have coarser effects on our buildings. It can disintegrate our building structure. Weathering agencies include rain, winds. Winds might include hurricane, tornadoes, and mild winds, gusts, and different types of other weathering agencies. And to provide a smooth surface finish, even extra weathering agencies can also include extra heat from the sun in summer days, extreme summer days. To provide a smooth surface finish, as you can see that in masonry structures, in masonry buildings, if you just have a masonry bond, any type of bond, there are surface roughness and lumps on the surface of the wall. And you can also see the third function of the plastering is to provide pleasing appearance to the surface. Providing smooth surface does not guarantee that surface appears to be pleasing. Alright, let's move to and study some important technical terminologies. What is background? Background. The surface to which first coat of the plastering is applied is called background. The original surface of the brick masonry or any masonry is called background. On which first coat of the plastering is applied is called background. It can be walls of any type. Before applying surface finishing or plastering is called background. Alright, dubbing out. Dubbing out is the filling of the hollow spaces of the background before applying the plastering is called dubbing out. You can see that before applying a plaster there are different holes due to brick bats, or you can say that the bonding or the mortar which you applied is having some is lacking some material, or having some hole have created some hole, or maybe some mortar have been disintegrated and fell on the ground and created a hole. To cover that hole we use dumping out technique. Dumping out, we fill those holes with the appropriate plastering. This is called dumping out. In this wall you can see that dumping out has been carried out, and here this mason is carrying out dumping. Here you can see there are different holes visible. Alright, finishing coat. The final layer of the surface finish is called finishing coat. Its basic purpose is appearance, and this layer is the thinnest layer. The finishing coat is the thinnest layer among all the coats. By coat we means layer. Alright, hacking. The process of making the background rough to make the to act as key for plastering is called hacking. As you know that if you directly apply the plastering on the reinforced cement concrete, it will not adhere to the surface, and it will be removed, or it will form surface some you can say that it will form some lumps on the surface, and with the passage of time it will start disintegrating and will fall from the surface. To make the bonding of the mortar with the surface enough so that they adhere to the surface, we need to have a hacking of the surface. In this technique we make the surface rough with the help of chisels or some electronic devices, and these holes or self-created holes will act as a key with in between plastering and the surface which needs to be finished. All right, here you can see this is important. Means rather than applying or using machinery for creating holes or creating keys on the surface, while plastering we should have some engravement on the surface of the wall, so that later we can apply surface mortar, or we can also apply different types of tiles on the surface of the wall. All right, peeling. The removal of the plaster from the background is called peeling. If you remove the plaster from the original wall is called peeling. Peeling, chilna, means just if you peel an orange, if you peel a banana, peeling. Alright, blistering. Blistering is the concept of local swelling of the finished plastered or painted surface is known as blistering. It is due to lack of adhesion of the plaster or paint with the surface. This is called blistering. Bubbles banjana. This is also blistering. This can be due to lack of adhesion or creation of some gaseous components. Means it can be due to efflorescence too. What is efflorescence? It will be in our upcoming slides. We will study about efflorescence. So this is blistering. All right, cracking. The development of angular fractures or cracks. Angular fractures or cracks. This is important. Angular. They need to be angular. Why not angular? If they are horizontal or vertical, then we have different terminologies for those type of cracks. The development of angular fractures or cracks in a plastered surface is called cracking. In case of painting, it indicates the presence of soft undercoat. This is cracking. You must be aware that these are not shear cracking, which you study in design of beams, RCC beams. Shear cracking occurs near to the support, as shear stresses are critical near the support, and shear cracks are diagonal cracks. Web shear crack and flexure shear crack, and you can see that this is a web shear crack, but this is not a web shear crack because in wall there is no concept of web shear cracking. All right, checking. The longitudinal split of painted or plastered surface is known as checking. This is you can see that this is a wall and this is almost a longitudinal split. This is means there was a lintel beam, and you can see sill beam, and this is sill beam, and this above is lintel beam. Sill beam, you can see that there is a gap formed, and this gap is called checking. Sometimes it is intentionally created outside the building, just to know where the building's RCC ends and where brickwork starts. This is the differentiating line between beam, RCC and brickwork, so that for future interventions you can remove this wall with accuracy. Okay, chalking. The dull or powdery appearance of the painted or plastered surface is known as chalking. Dull or powdery appearance. How? It indicates insufficient or inferior binding materials used in the paints or chalk plaster. How you can check this chalking? visually you can inspect this thing, or if you just move your hands on the wall and your hand gets some calcium oxide or binding material, then you can know that a chalking phenomena has occurred. You can see both in these pictures. Crazing. The irregular development of hair-like cracks on the plaster surface is called crazing. Irregular development. These are random irregular development, minute hairline cracks. You can see here. These types of cracks can also occur on your pavements, bitumen pavements, and in that this terminology is same, crazing. Alright. Dadu. The special treatment provided to the plastered wall at their lower level, usually in bathrooms, is called dadu. It is provided up to 1 meter height from the floor level. It may consist of rich cement mortar, glazed tiles, etc. You might have seen in your houses that means up to 1 feet or 2 feet height from the bottom of your wall. In bathrooms there is a special treated wall or tiled wall, or you can say that rich cement mortar is placed so that phenomena of dampness do not occur. Just to prevent dampness, these are applied, and also for aesthetic and beauty purposes. Skirting. A special treatment provided to plastered wall on their lower level, usually in drawing and living rooms of the building, is called skirting. For beautifying purposes, to 2 feet or 3 feet height from the bottom of your drawing room and living room, we apply skirting. Sometimes it is wooden type of surface formation, and sometimes we apply tiles on the walls just for beautifying purposes. Nothing like dampness, because in rooms we do not find the phenomena of dampness so frequently. You must be aware that dampness can be caused from inside of the building. It is not necessary that all the dampness agents are occurring from the outside of the building. It is provided up to 15 centimeter height from the floor level. It is not recommended. It is just a guideline that it can be up to 15 centimeter height. It is usually consists of materials which is used for providing margins or border of the floor. These are margins and borders of the floor, in case you are just washing this area so that dampness do not move towards the wall. It provides to protect walls from the water in case of washing of the floors. Alright, plaster. What is plaster? A fine paste of plaster, or in Urdu you can say, or Hindi you can say plaster. Plaster and plaster are same words. A fine paste of mortar made by mixing fine paste. It's not coarser. We do not recommend coarser surface finishing, because the main purpose of plastering is to make surface smooth, and you cannot make surface smooth by providing coarse paste. How you can differentiate between fine paste of mortar and coarse paste of mortar? Just by using sand. If you are using coarser sand, then it is coarse paste, and if you are using finer sand, then it is fine paste. A fine paste of mortar made by mixing cement with sand, or fat lime with sand or surkhi in addition to sufficient quantity of water is called plastering. There are two basic ingredients in plastering: a binding material and sand. A binding material and sand. In binding material there can be three different types of binding material. It can be cement, it can be lime, any type of lime, and it can be surkhi. These three binding materials have a phenomenon of binding. Whichever materials you incorporate in them, they try to bind them by formulating some different chemical oxides and crystals. Anyhow, commonly used in Pakistan in places where there is poverty, you can use lime or surkhi. But in reinforced concrete frames and cities, cement plastering is used. All right. When cement is used as a binding material, the plaster is called cement plaster. All right. If binding material is cement with sand, then it is cement plaster. If lime is used as a binding material in addition to sand, then it's called lime plaster. You must be aware that lime is having weak strength when they are mixed with sand and a plaster is formed, as compared to cement formed plastering. An ideal plaster. What is an ideal plaster? Should be smooth. It should be smooth. It should not be rough. Non-absorbent. It should not be absorbing water. Otherwise, purpose of the plastering is partially invalid. And washable. It should be washable. Washable does not mean that you just keep on washing your mortar covered walls. Washable means that it should not disintegrate by rain. It should not be affected by weathering agencies. This is also important, that your ideal plaster should not be affected by extreme heat or extreme rainfall or extreme wind or any impact loading on your plastered wall. All right. The finished surface of the wall constructed in brick or stone is generally so coarse textured that they provide unsuitable finish for the internal wall of the most of the buildings. You say why we need plastering. The finished surface of when you do a brickwork or stonework or stone masonry or brick masonry, the surface finish of the brickwork or stonework is coarse textured and unsuitable finish. You cannot live there. There are holes created, and with the passage of time, the mortar disintegrates. The mortar used for the binding of the different brickwork and stoneworks start disintegrating, and there can be caterpillars and insects inside them, and we need a smooth surface finish. These surfaces are rendered smooth by application of 1 or 2 coats of plaster. All right, you can render them smooth by applying. Means you can see that the word render is used as an adjective too, that when you apply some surface finishing on any surface, you call it as rendering. In software applications, when you apply a material in AutoCAD 3D or 3D Max, when you apply a material on the surface of the walls, it is called rendering. The ceiling is also rendered smooth with plaster. The objective of external plastering is to cover the surface to enable it to resist the effect of weathering agencies. Alright, we have studied in function of the plastering. However, a good brickwork made of sound, well-burned bricks or neat stone masonry constructed of durable stones does not require external plastering. You can see that good brickwork is necessary, made of sound, well-burnt bricks. These are the features of the brick. And neat stone masonry constructed. Neat stone masonry means that there should not be any holes or some masonry which has been extruded out or intruded inside, and made of durable stones. So there are different types of stones. Durable stones are non-absorbent, high strength, having little disintegration, and there are different types of stones. And there should be metamorphic stones or igneous stones which are good and durable. Does not require external plastering. The objective of internal plastering is to provide a smooth surface in which dust and dirt cannot lodge. Lodge means to stick, and to form a smooth surface for applying white or color wash, distemper or paint. Means internal plastering should be smooth so that dust and dirt cannot adhere to the surface, and they can be after applying whitewash or distemper or paint. All right. Now let's move to types of plastering. Cement plastering. The mix ratio of mortar in case of cement plastering depends upon nature of the work to be plastered. The mixed design of the cement plastering or the mixed design of the mortar certainly depends upon the nature of the work and which needs to be plastered. If you need richer mix, then the quantity of the ratio of cement needs to be increased. If you need a coarser type of finish, then coarser sand should be used, and if you need finer, then fine sand should be used. And if you need a weaker mortar, then low quantity of cement needs to be used. For rich cement plastering at sensitive places like inside bathrooms or WC, etc., 1:3 cement plaster is used. 1:3 is recommended for a normal plastering, and for general plastering of the wall, 1:5 to 1:8 cement plaster mix needs to be used. All right, this is rich mix and this is lean mix. What is the process preparing the surface? How first you need to prepare the surface. Before applying plaster, the surface should be prepared properly. Means you should just with the use of jharu, you should clean the surface of the masonry. The joint of the masonry are properly racked to the depth of 10 to 15 millimeter to provide key to the plaster. As you know that when we are doing masonry, there are already keys provided. Means the mortar is inside 10 to 15 millimeter inside, so they provide a key to the plaster surface. The surface is then thoroughly wetted with water. The surface of the wall is wetted with the water, washed well and kept wet for 6 hours. Then you should have proper curing of the masonry wall, and it should be washed well and cured well for 6 hours. When the surface is ready, plaster is applied. Means what is the benefit of keeping the wall wet is just that means the cement and sand will adhere to the surface well for temporary adhesion and for a long-term curing benefits. Applying the plaster, how you need to apply the plaster. Cement plaster may be applied in 1 or 2 coats. That depends on the demand of the structure and demand of the client, that 1 coat or 2 coat or 3 coats need to be applied. 2 coats means layers, 1 layer or 2 layer or 3 layer. You must be aware that first layer is thickest layer, second layer is thinner, and third layer is more thinner. In case of plastering of single coat, mortar is dashed against the prepared surface into the uniform thickness with the help of trowel. With the help of trowel, plaster is applied on the surface having uniform thickness. Wood screeds, this is the wood screeds. A steel screed is also available, 7.5 centimeter wide and of required thickness of the plasters are generally fixed technically 2.4 to 3 meter apart to act as gauges guides in order to keep the plaster of the required thickness. There should be a gauge that uniform thickness has been applied. Just you can have a uniform thickness at the outer periphery, and you can just move the wooden screed towards the other side, and that level will be maintained. Carefully plumbing should be done in the fixing of these screeds. Means that first screeds should be applied properly oriented and properly plumb lined, so that that level is your benchmark level is maintained. Alright, cement plastering, these are the technical terminologies: steel float, wooden float, trowel, and mason's straight edge. You can see that a leveling adjustment tool has been also been provided in this straight edge. Surplus mortar is removed with the help of mason's straight edge with this one. and then mortar is pressed well with the wooden float. This is wooden float you can press so that mortar fill in the joints of the masonry wall. The surface is then finally polished with the trowel or iron float. This is for polishing. Trowel is first used, and this is for final finishing. Steel float is used. The thickness of this course should not be more than 16 millimeters. 16 millimeters should not be, the first coat should not be more than 16 millimeters. In case of plastering is done in two coats, first coat is applied as described above, with the only difference that is not polished. First coat is the only difference between first coat and second. When you need to provide a second coat, then you should be aware that your first coat need not to be polished. It should be rough, so that your second coat adhere to the first coat. Before applying the second coat, the first coat is allowed to set. Alright, this is important. Before application of second coat, first coat need to be set. It need to be hardened, but it would not become dry, and is also roughened with the scratching tools. This is our scratching tool to provide the key to the second coat. First coat should provide a key to the second coat. The second coat is then applied in thin layer not exceeding 3 millimeters. First coat was 16 millimeter, as the first layer needed to fill in the space between two bricks, and also there are broken bats and something like that, and first coat needs to be thicker 16 millimeter, and second coat is 3 millimeter in thickness. Within 48 hours you have to apply the second coat. It is then well troweled and rubbed perfectly smooth with the help of steel float. It is then allowed to set for 2 days and cured for more than 7 days. Curing, proper curing. You know, cement need proper curing to help cement form its crystalline structure and make it more denser. Okay, suitability of cement plaster. This type of plastering forms an ideal coating for external finishing. Okay, for external coating finishing, cement plaster is ideal. It is used for internal rendering of common important buildings internally and externally both. It is suitable. It is especially suited for damp conditions in bathrooms. In bathrooms it is more suitable. Second type of plastering is lime plastering. The proportioning of the ingredients of the lime plastering is adopted according to the number of coats to be applied. Alright, if the plaster is to be applied in one coat, 1 part lime to 1.5 part sand is used. As you know that lime is weaker and provides less adhesion than cement. So means with lower parts of sand, higher proportion of lime is used. If 2 coats are to be applied, the proportion of first coat is same as above, while the second coat consists of 2 parts of lime and 1 part of sand. 2:1 and 1:1.5 for first coat, and 2:2:1 for second coat. If 3 coats are to be applied, the proportion of the third coat consists of 4 parts of lime to 1 part of the sand. If 3 coats are to be applied, then 1 part of the 4 parts of lime to 1 part of the sand. In actual practice, all these coats needs to be 1 part of lime to 2 parts of the sand. Means just changing a mixed design of the lime plastering is not feasible in practical aspects. So you need to provide 1 part of the lime, 1 part cement and 2 parts sand. Thickness of the lime plaster varies from 15 millimeter to 20 millimeters. This is important. All right. Preparing the surface. The method of preparing the surface is same as described for the cement plastering. And application of the first coat. It is applied by dashing the lime plaster with the help of trowels against the wall surface between the screeds. Screeds are your benchmark level. The plaster is pressed well in the joints. The function of the coat is to fill at the irregularities of the surface. Average thickness of this coat is 10 to 12 millimeter. It is then left to dry for 3 to 4 days. Application of the second coat. Before applying this coat, the first coat is well washed and scratched over with the edge of trowel. The second coat is then pressed against the wall with the mason's trowel and rubbed with the straight edge. The thickness of this coat is 6 to 10 millimeter. Alright, that's okay. Application of final and finished coat. This coat usually consists of fat lime with which is called lime putty, and fat lime, and it's called lime putty. It is also applied on the second coat, made perfectly plain, and then rubbed first with the wooden trowel and then with the steel floor to polish the surface. It is necessary that before applying the second coat, you need to rub the first coat with the help of some engraving tools, and then second coat needs to be applied and polished. It is 3 to 6 millimeter in thickness, and it is first coat was 6 to 10 millimeter, and it is 3 to 6 millimeter in thickness. It is allowed to dry for 2 days, and the surface is cured for 7 to 10 days. Suitable. This type of plastering is suitable for internal rendering of the building, but it is not commonly adopted these days. Lime is a weaker component, and due to adverse conditions, climatic conditions, and rainfall, this lime plastering is not suitable for external use. All right. Third type of plastering is mud plastering. Mud is used. The wall surface is first prepared as described in case of cement plastering. The mud plaster is then evenly dashed against the wall surface with the wooden float. Typical that procedure. After 24 hours, the surface is tamped. The function of tamping is to compact the layer and to drive it deep into the joint. It also helps to avoid development of cracks due to hollows. Tamping. Benefit of tamping is avoid development of cracks due to hollows. After tamping, water is sprinkled slightly on the slightly, and the surface is polished with the steel trowel. A thin wash of cow dung is then, cow dung means gobar. Cow dung is then applied. It is fibrous, so it helps in benefiting the mud plastering, and it helps in crack filling and crack bridging. Is then applied, and tamping is done again and places where small cracks have formed. Finally, the surface is given a wash of fine white earth and cow dung. Sometimes surface is given a wash of fine earth, cow dung, and cement in proportion of 3:2:1. Earth, cow dung, and cement are mixed, and then surface is smoothened. This type of plastering, mud plastering, you might have seen in villages, in mountainous areas where cement, there are a lot of transportation issues of cement, there are financial issues of the people. They cannot afford cement, and lime is also not available because those are manufactured. Lime and cement are manufactured, and mud is commonly available, so no cost, and also in plain areas there is a lot of mud, so mud plastering is common practice there. And this type of plastering is done walls of temporary sheds and countrysides building. Stucco plastering. This is special type of plastering. You can see the different types of different shades and different designs of the plastering. Stucco is the given name for decorative type of plastering, which is an excellent finish like that with the marble lining. After finishing the surface, stucco plastering is applied in 3 coats. After preparing the surface, stucco applied is in 3 coats, 3 layers. Each layer should be permitted to dry thoroughly before applying the next coat. For internal surface, the first coat is also known as scratch coat. Scratch is basic word used for rough coat consisting of lime plaster 12 millimeter in thickness. First, you have to provide lime plastering. The second coat is brown coat consisting of rich cement, rich lime plastering. Instead of lime, you can also use cement plastering for stucco plastering. The final coat is or finished coat consists of mixture of very fine lime and white ground stone marble and quartz 3 millimeter in thickness. It is carefully polished with a bag of linen containing moist chalk in the first instant, and then chalk and oil. The surface is then finally finished with rubbing it with the oil to make it more smooth and bright. For external surface, the first and second coat are 10 to 12 millimeter thick, and the finished coat is 3 to 6 millimeter thick. Alright, that previous provision has been provided here, that first coat needs to be thicker and second coat needs to be thinner. The proportion of the ingredients of the first two coats are 1 part of cement and 3 parts of the sand, with 10% by weight of hydrated lime, 1 part cement and 3 parts sand. And also hydrated lime needs to be applied. The finishing coat consists of 1 part cement, 2 parts, this is parts of sand, in which some coloring pigments are also added. Okay, any type of plastering you can apply coloring pigments to it. The basic backdrop of applying coloring pigments is this, that when you are doing whitewash, then you will have to apply many coats of whitewashing to make that white, that colored surface, colored plaster surface white. Method of applying this plastering is same as described in the cement or lime plastering. Suitability means method of stucco plastering is similar to the cement or lime plastering or mud plastering. Suitability is this, that this type of plastering is suitable for external as well as internal user surfaces of the building to provide an external finish. Okay. The fifth type of plastering is the Mughal plastering. It is generally applied in 2 coats of lime mortar by mixing lime and sand and surhi in the ratio 4:3:1, along with the glue and powdered gulnuts. The surface is well wetted and second coat of about 1.25 millimeter thickness is applied, and the first coat is hardened. The finished plaster surface is kept wet for 3 weeks. Suitability, it is suitable for internal finishing of the high class buildings and not commonly applied these days. Mughal plastering and is extinct nowadays. Okay. You can see that cement plastering, mud plastering is applying, stucco plastering applied, and Mughal plastering different shades and designs are applied. Lime plastering, chalk is used. These are different pictures. Defects in plastering. We will be studying 9 different types of defects observed in plastering. Different types of defects occurring in plastering plastering works such as blistering, cracks, fluorescence, flaking, peeling, popping, softness, and uneven surfaces. These defects in plastering needs to be repaired as soon as they are observed. During construction means if your project has been in phase 5 or phase 6, in some countries it's phase 6, monitoring and control, and you have handed over your project to the client, then within 1 year some certain provisions are provided in contracts that within 1 year if some defects are visible in the structure, then it's up to the contractor to fix and repair those defects. So it is a good practice that whenever a defect has been observed, it should be repaired as soon as it's possible. Otherwise it may cause disintegration of your structure. And repairing also needs to be carried out to prolong your lifespan of the building. Okay. Blistering of plaster surface, cracking and plastering, fluorescence on the plaster surface, flaking, peeling. Sorry. Flaking, peeling, popping. Okay, uneven plaster surface, softness of the plaster, rust stain on the plaster surface, and graining. Alright, blistering. First defect is blistering. Blister, you might be aware that blister is its surface has been formed, bubbles are being formed on the surface of the plaster. Blistering of the plaster surface occurs when small patches swells out beyond the plane of the plastered surface. You know that there is a plane needs to be plane, and there's some swelling or pooping out of the plane, and the blistering is seen in case of plaster surface inside the buildings. And you can see the phenomena. This is blistering. It can occur in paints, and it can occur also in plasters. Defects in premier damp concrete substrate, dampness has been occurred, and salts in the solution. The salt has been formulated outside, and due to reaction, chemical reaction, salts, so different salts are formulated, and you know that this is impervious coat, so it does not apply the salts to be moved outside of this layer, so blistering occurs. Sometimes air and bleed water occurs, and water evaporates and air has been left. Okay, cracks in plastering. Different cracks are visible. Cracks are formed on the plaster surface. These cracks can be hairline cracks, which are difficult to notice. These can be hairline cracks and which are difficult to notice, and it can be wider cracks which are easier seen. This can be hairline cracks, and it can be wider cracks. The development of the fine crack is known as crazing. These are known as crazings. We have already studied in technical terminologies used in plastering. These are hairline cracks, and visible cracks are crazing. You should be aware that these cracks are not dangerous cracks. These are not structural cracks. These are structural wall cracks. If there is load bearing wall, even then these are not a thing to be worried about. These are surface cracks. These are not structural internal cracks. You need to be aware that we will study in future that due to earthquakes there are some visible and very separated and cracks having bigger width, and those are something to be worried about. Otherwise these hairline cracks and crazing are not to be worried about. Cracks on the plaster surface, but these type of cracks does affect your serviceability, limits it, you can say, or serviceability aspects of the structure. Cracks on the plaster surface can be due to the thermal movements. Due to thermal movements, inside it is colder or hotter, and outside is cold, or outside it is cold and inside it is hot. And so discontinuity of the surface, surface discontinuity, structural defects in the building, faulty workmanship, poor quality of workmanship, or excessive shrinkage has been occurred. Then it can also cause debris. Inside there is excessive shrinkage, and outside there is no shrinkage, so excessive shrinkage can cause. Efflorescence on the plaster surface, this white powdery surface, when it emits outside that efflorescence is formed on the plaster when soluble salts are present in the plaster making material, as well as building materials such as bricks, sand, and even water used in the construction work may contain soluble salts. This also occurs due to soluble salts. The main difference between efflorescence and blistering is this, that in blistering there is an impervious layer and they do not come out, poop out, and in efflorescence they do find the passage, and they disrupt or they may engulf the outer layer of the plaster or paint. When a neatly constructed wall dries out, the soluble salts are brought to the surface, and they appear to form whitish crystalline substances. Whitish crystalline substances are due to alkalis, some chemical reactives. Such a growth is referred to as efflorescence, and it seriously affects the adhesion of paint with the wall surface. Yeah, it do affect the adhesion of the paints on the wall surface. With the passage of time, your whole wall will look like efflorescence. Efflorescence give very bad appearance and can be removed to some extent by dry brushing. You just have to carry a brush and just rub it on the surface, and this will be removed, and again plaster the surface. Okay, flaking. Flaking is similar to the efflorescence, but there is little differences in efflorescence and flaking. The formation of very small loose mass. It is like fungus applied on the walls. On the plaster surface is known as flaking, and it is mainly used to bond failure between excessive coats of plaster. Bond failure, it mainly occurs due to bond failure between excessive coats of plastering. Peeling means just when you remove some layer from any substance, it's called peeling. Plastering, from some portion of the surface comes off, and a patch is formed. Such formation is termed as peeling, and it is mainly due to the bond failure between successive coats of the plaster. Due to bond failure means you can prevent this defect by providing a roughness on the previous layer, and or providing keys or graves, engravement in the previous layer, and before applying the second coat or third coat. Pooping, sometimes the plaster mix contains particles which expand on being set. A conical hole, or means these particles can be of non-homogeneous, you can say that those particles are not fine enough, or their fineness index is different than all other particles. A conical hole in plastered surface is formed in front of the particle. This conical hole is called blow or poop. A conical hole inside the wall, outside the wall, is called blow or poop, and this is called pooping. Uneven plastered surface, defects become prominent only due to poor workmanship of the plastering work. Okay. Softness of the plaster. The excessive dampness at central points of the plaster surface makes the portion soft. Alright. Moisture does have effect on the plastering. The main reason for this softness is undue thinness of the finished coat. The main reason is this, that your finished coat is very thin. The presence of deliquescent salts, alkalis mainly, excessive suctions of the undercoats, suctions from the undercoats. Okay, due to dryness, excessive suction from the undercoats can occur. Rust stains in the plaster. Rust is due to iron oxide, formation of iron oxide. Rust stains are sometimes their iron oxides are having reddish type of dark brownish or reddish type of stains. Stains means dark. Are sometimes seen on the plaster surface, especially when plaster is applied on metal lathe. This is okay. Graining is appearance of mortar joints. See, these mortar joints are available, appearable, and similar breaks in the continuity of the surface characteristics of the background. Applying undercoat before plastering may help prevent graining. If you apply several coats, then this graining can be prevented. Okay, thank you for listening, and thanks for being with us, and just review those concepts, and go through the lecture slide, and read through lines thoroughly, and if there is some confusion, then you can ask me on online channel. Thank you.